Hi teachers, my name is Claudette,
And my name is Yunha.
and today we're going to be talking to you about supporting primary school children with narrative and writing macrostructure. So enhancing both narrative and writing skills is essential for the holistic development of our students, especially those facing language difficulties, and can help them across subjects and for their future schooling. So supporting narrative and writing macrostructure is important to help students express themselves clearly and coherently and assist them in their ability to organize their thoughts effectively in both oral and written forms. Writing macrostructure ensures clarity and coherence in written compositions, both persuasive and narrative, which is important to help students get their message across effectively. And whether it's telling a captivating story, composing an informative report, or crafting a persuasive argument, learning both narrative and writing macrostructure is vital for effective communication across all text types. For example, in a narrative, a clear beginning, middle, and end captivates listeners or readers and conveys the story's message. Similarly, in a persuasive text, a well-structured layout ensures that information is presented logically, aiding comprehension.
And proficiency in organizing ideas also extends across all subjects. Although this is not as profound in primary school years, we know that this will become especially important as students enter high school. For example, in science, students have to write lab reports with a clear hypothesis, methods, result, and conclusion. In history, they need to craft essays that follow a chronological or thematic structure to analyze events or make connections. And even in maths, explaining problem-solving strategies coherently requires an understanding of macrostructure. Moreover, mastering narrative and writing macrostructure prepares students for success in their future schooling and beyond. Whether they're telling stories in university presentations or composing reports in the workplace or even crafting persuasive emails, the ability to organize their ideas effectively will serve them well in the future. So, as speech pathologists and teachers, we play a crucial role in supporting students' language development and communication skills. So, by emphasizing the importance of both narrative and writing macrostructure, we can empower our students to express themselves confidently and coherently.
Okay, so we know that it's very important for school-age children to be able to use and understand narrative structure to be able to say and write cohesive stories. We also know children are exposed to narrative text at a young age, mainly through picture storybooks, and that children begin retelling oral narratives at about an early preschool age.
And in early stage one, kindergarten children are expected to be able to tell a story or information to peers or adults using oral language, and also retell their favorite stories, poems, songs, and rhymes, with some parts as exact repetition and some in their own words. And also, they're expected to recall details of events or stories using who, what, when, where, and how.
In these early stages, oral narratives and storytelling can help bridge the gap between oral and written language. Oral narratives often contain the same level of language complexity as written language. Therefore, through oral narrative-based language intervention, teachers can help young children learn to comprehend language that is similar in complexity to the written language they'll need to decode and comprehend in later grades. Furthermore, research suggests that children's oral narrative skills support reading comprehension and the transition from oral to written communication.
And students with language difficulties can have impaired narrative skills among a range of other language deficits. Therefore, they can benefit from narrative intervention to help produce more complex, complete, and organized narratives. Narrative intervention can also help children with language difficulties produce narratives with more total words, more different words, and fewer syntax errors.
It's known that persistent difficulties with narrative production are argued to have a negative impact on children's academic and social success. Therefore, it's critical to support children with narrative macrostructure in early years to assist in increasing understanding of narrative conventions before the academic demands and expectations in relation to narrative writing increase.
Story retells are an academically relevant narrative task. So, personal story generations and narrative skills are also often at play in social contexts. Children often engage in telling of stories and narratives regularly to relate experiences to others and to also establish relationships. Therefore, enhancing children's narrative production skills can facilitate positive peer relationships for children with language difficulties.
So now let's talk a bit about how to build understanding and the use of story grammar elements for children in stage 1. So explicitly teaching story grammar elements helps to build the foundations for narrative retell and production, as story grammar represents the basic structure of a narrative text. It's a system of rules that help describe the consistent features found in narrative texts and help to describe the story parts, arrangement of the story, and how the parts are related.
An example of intervention designed to improve academic language outcomes by targeting story grammar and macrostructure, and also incidentally microstructure such as vocabulary through narrative production, is story champs. So this intervention relies on established principles to optimize learning, such as frequent opportunities to respond, systematic scaffolding, and immediate corrective feedback. Story Champs uses story grammar icons as additional visual support and breaks the intervention into a retail segment and story generation segment. So we can use the principle of this intervention to help children in early stage 1 with oral narrative retell by explicitly teaching story grammar elements. And we can use visuals to introduce the different macrostructural elements of narratives to children, such as the character, setting, problem, feeling, planned, and actioned. And further, we can gradually increase the complexity as students become familiar with all the elements. And verbal and visual scaffolds can be used initially and reduced as the children become more independent. And to get a bit more of an understanding of how this intervention is implemented, here is a small video to see it in action.
Just make sure my sound is sharing. Okay.
Story Chunks was designed for teaching story structure to young kids. We hope that this knowledge of story structure helps children further develop literacy and language skills. So in the first step, I model the story, and then I place icons on the corresponding pictures. The purpose of this is to teach children that stories have an identifiable pattern. If you're ready to play Story Champs, say yay, Story Champs! Boys and girls, you're going to have to tell this story yourself, so make sure you listen carefully, okay? Yesterday, David went to the doctor's office. David got a shot in his arm and a shot in his leg. David was sad because the shots hurt. Then he asked the doctor for a treat because he knew it would make him feel better. The doctor said, "Sure, here's a lollipop." And after he ate his lollipop, David felt much better. Everybody, what part of the story is this? Get ready. 1, 2, 3. Character! Very nice. What part of the story is this one right here, boys and girls? Get ready. 1, 2, 3. Problem! Very nice. What part of the story is this one? Get ready. 1, 2, 3. Feeling! That's right! Before I ask the kids to tell the story themselves, I have to repeat it again. They need to hear it at least another time. So in this step, we play a game called Story Gestures. While I tell the story, they do gestures that correspond to the parts of the stories. All right, boys and girls, we're going to play Story Gestures. We're going to play Story Gestures, okay? Yesterday, David had to go to the doctor's office. Okay, that's right, there's David. He's our character. The doctor gave him a shot in the arm and in the leg. That's right, his problem. That's a problem. Right. In the team retell, the whole class acts as a team. This particular step is important because they're not quite ready to tell the whole story beginning to end by themselves. So they get the help from, they're working together to tell the story. Okay, your turn. Tell me, everybody think about it, okay? Mouse quiet. This is your turn to think about it, okay? Think about who our character is. Who's this story about? Shh, shh, shh. What's his name? Daniel. Who's this guy right here? Do you remember him? David. That's right, his name is David. Everybody say David with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. David! That's right, David is our character. Okay, everybody think about it. Partner retell. This is my favorite part. The best thing I like about this is that the children get their award and they shine as, fantastic storytellers and individually as storytellers. You know what we're going to do now? We're gonna send you off to do your partner with champ checks, okay? Julio, you're gonna go with Miss Katie, okay? Come here, Julio. You're gonna be the champ checker first, okay, buddy?
He needs to get a spot on his arm and on his leg.
During the partner retell, I walk around to make sure that the kids who need the additional support are getting it.
Then he got in a shot.
Yep, check that. She said he got a shot.
Then he feels sad because it hurts.
That's right.
Then he asked the doctor, "Can I have a lollipop?"
Check.
Then he ate it up.
The champ ceremony finalizes this team spirit in the program. Okay, everybody give yourselves a round of applause. All right, now tell me, if you guys are story champs, say yay, story champs.
Okay. So for older primary school children, it's important that they know the purpose of learning about narrative writing and that they listen to and use narratives every day in a variety of mediums, such as art, music, movies, as well as oral and written forms as well.
And teachers and clinicians can use narrative intervention to teach complex language, vocabulary, inferencing, social language use, and also story grammar to promote the comprehension and production of complex language.
So there's not one right way to implement narrative intervention in teaching. However, research by Spencer and Peterson in 2020 revealed some principles of narrative intervention that can help guide practice. So number one is to build story structure before vocabulary and complex language. So that's kind of what we saw in Story Champs before, using multiple exemplars to promote generalization, promoting active participation to increase learning opportunities, contextualizing, unpacking, and reconstructing stories. So making the activity meaningful and relevant to the children in class. Using visuals to make abstract concepts concrete. So using visuals such as the story mountain or arc. And also delivering immediate corrective feedback, so positive reinforcement, using efficient and effective prompts, so using visual prompts, for example, and fading them slowly, differentiating, individualizing, and extending. So group narrative intervention is highly versatile and many different targets can be addressed depending on what you want to work on. And last point is to make it fun, so to ensure what is intrinsically motivating for the child. And as a final consideration, it's important to recognize that children vary in their narrative abilities and some may need more support than others. It's also important to recognize that there can be cultural differences in narrative structure, and it's important to tailor teaching to meet the diverse needs of students. So another important text type for students to learn is persuasive writing. So learning how to produce good quality persuasive texts, whether spoken or written, is a useful skill that allows individuals to effectively voice their opinions and engage in exchange of different perspectives. So this skill will have an extended impact on their higher education and ultimately in their professional and occupational use.
While learning the basic structure of narrative stories tend to develop naturally for typical students through exposure in the earlier years of education, teaching persuasive text requires a little bit more explicit instruction for both typically developing students as well as those who require additional support. Since introducing this text type in a naturalistic way can be a little bit tricky, the focus should be on providing explicit teaching, modeling, and guided practice to best support students to learn this text type.
As students in stage 1 are not expected to plan, draft, and create persuasive writing, focus will be on older students. So from stage 2 to 3, students are expected to learn both the macrostructure and microstructure of persuasive texts. So instead of diving directly into the structure of a persuasive text, it's important to thoroughly explain the purpose behind writing one. So this approach helps students grasp an understanding of how persuasive text may differ from other text types they've learned. So it can be explained to the students that while narrative writing aims to engage or entertain readers, persuasive texts are crafted to persuade someone or change their opinions about a topic, presenting a different perspective in the process. To solidify this understanding, different forms of persuasive text can be explored in class. This includes analyzing letters, debates, speeches, and advertisements to increase students' familiarity with the different forms of the same text type, learning that there is no one correct way to persuade. Persuasive text can also be compared with a narrative text. This comparison will enable students to identify the similarities and differences in the features and purposes of the two text types and will consolidate their knowledge of different genres of writing.
When teaching persuasive writing, the very general skeleton of the writing should be taught to the students and first and followed by the structure of a paragraphs, such as the pure paragraph. Then the language at sentence level should be taught, such as the vocabulary used within a sentence. And teaching the fundamental structure of writing always begins with introducing the students to the different components of persuasive writing. So the introduction, which introduces the topic and the writer's opinion, body paragraphs, which expand and strengthen the main arguments, and consists of a topic sentence followed by sentences containing details, and finally the conclusion, which summarizes the arguments that were discussed in the writing. It's essential to explain the purposes of each part and how they contribute to the overall effectiveness of the text. So with a broad range of scaffolds available on the internet, teachers should have the freedom to choose the ones that best suit their preferences and the needs of their students. So some of the most widely used scaffolds are the persuasive hamburger or the 5-paragraph essay structure. And similar to teaching narrative writing, it's recommended to utilize graphic organizers for teaching graphic organizers. And these tools assist students in comprehending text structures and also planning their ideas more effectively. And this also supports not only students with additional needs, but also it benefits typically developing students as well by providing a concrete structure that can be easily duplicated and modified.
Teachers and clinicians can then progress to teaching at the paragraph level. Here, students learn about the elements within a paragraph. So many Australian classrooms use the scaffold peel or teal. So while there's criticism of the rigid peel paragraph structure for potentially restricting the students' writing development, it's crucial to recognise that offering a scaffold with distinct phases makes it easier for novice writers and those with additional needs to follow and produce writings that are more structured and coherent.
And to conclude, for students to be able to refine their understanding of persuasive writing and to construct arguments with increasing sophistication through the high years of schooling, a strong foundation should be provided in the earlier years through structured scaffolds and explicit teaching. And for both persuasive and narrative text, using tools like graphic organizers can help students gain the confidence as novice writers to navigate writing different text types more effectively. Finally, mastering both narrative and persuasive skills will empower students to express their opinions, influence others, and engage meaningfully in various contexts, extending beyond the classroom to benefit their academic, professional, and personal lives. Thank you for listening to our presentation. I hope this was helpful.